Hey, this is Bartik again with StartupMath.com. So what I want to talk about now is a subsequent round. So let's say the company raised a seed round. In our last case, it was $500,000, and the company's made significant progress, and they were able to raise a Series A. I want to talk about what that looks like and how the model changes. So none of this has changed. That's the same capital structure of the company as if assuming that it had issued options. Remember, this $1.75 is the same as in the previous example. Now, let's assume that the new investor, the Series A investor, which is now in this line of the model, future investor 1, um, has the same demand for having the option pool be 10% after the round. So the math is the same. Basically, an additional 340,000 options have to be issued following in this case, $1 million investment from the initial owner, the initial investor, and then the future investor of $3 million. So 340,000 options have to be created for the company to maintain this 10% option pool. Um, Notice again that in this example, the initial investor has put in $1 million, whereas before he put in $500,000. And the reason why he has to put in $1 million now, he doesn't have to, but he wants to, is because this way the investor can roughly maintain his level of ownership. So before the Series A, the investor owned 20%, and upon an additional $1 million investment, the seed investor also owns another roughly 20%. Um, the reason why he has to put in additional money is because, like the founders, the initial investors are also going to be diluted by any additional money that is raised by an outside investor. So in this case, a new investor has come along and decided to put in $3 million. And with that $3 million, the new investor is able to acquire about 36% of the company. So what's interesting here is that if you look at the progression of the ownership of the entrepreneur, it goes from 100% to 70% to 29%. And you might be thinking, well, that sounds like a pretty bad deal for the entrepreneur. But let's think about this in terms of value created. So each share, although the entrepreneur owns less and less of the company, the value of the amount that he still maintains has gone up. So in this case, he owns 70% at a $2.5 million post-money valuation, which means that the founders have $1.75 million of value. Now, after the Series A, the founders own only 29%, which is a 41% decrease in ownership. But the post-money valuation after the Series A is $7.5 million. And their 29% of that $7.5 million is worth $2.2 million. So the actual value that's gone up is about $450,000, even though there was a drastic reduction in ownership. So in that scenario, um, although their ownership has gone down, the value that the entrepreneurs maintained is higher. Now, take a look at an example where instead of being an up round, because in this case the value of the next round occurred at a $3.5 million valuation, meaning that this $500,000 that was invested after the seed round or during the seed round generated more value than just $500,000. If you look at the down round scenario for the same, let me just change this to 2 million. Um, Now imagine that instead of it being worth 3.5 million, it's actually a down round, meaning that that $500,000 didn't create that same amount of value. Now the founders own even less of the company, um, and if you look at the actual value that they've lost, it's about $740,000. So they went from owning, um, about 100% beforehand to only owning 22% afterwards, and the value that they have is lower.